but you also have to be comfortable with co-opetition.
That's right.
Because you're very likely going to compete to some degree with these hyperscalers in one form or fashion.
Microsoft's purpose is in service of your purpose.
And again, 2024 is the year that partners come out as the leading edge of the spear on finding this buyer intent.
You show up to every meeting and demonstrate why you are relevant.
Every day I have to force myself to make sure that I'm taking one step ahead in terms of my own learning.
That flywheel of success is where you will build momentum, and that momentum will continue, and then you feed into the other systems to say, this is what we did, this is how we did it together.
Welcome to, or welcome back to the Ultimate Guide to Partnering. I'm Vince Menzione, your host, and my mission is to help leaders like you achieve your greatest results through successful partnering. Today is a special day. I have in the studio a friend and fellow podcaster, Rob Spee, the host of the Channel Journeys podcast, and someone I've got to know well over the last few years. Rob, welcome to the podcast.
Vince, thank you. So great to finally be down here in your beautiful studio.
And not the first time on the podcast. I think it's either 4 or 5 times, maybe 6 times.
It could be, yeah.
We'll tell the podcast journey together as part of the conversation. But I finally got you, I wrestled your arm down to get you to come down here to Boca finally. The long trip from Atlanta, so great to have you in the studio.
Well, thank you.
What do you think? What do you think of our?
This is gorgeous. I love it. The view here, and
not quite the view you're going to have. We're going to talk about where you're going after this event.
Yes, I'm going to be in the middle of that. So.
Yeah, you'll be out in the Atlantic Ocean having some fun.
Yes.
So for our viewers and our listeners, maybe just a little bit about you, Rob Spee, and a little bit about your channel journey.
Yeah, sure. Well, as I describe myself on my podcast, Vince, I say that I'm a cycling, sailing, and partner ecosystem fanatic.
I love it. How do those 3 tie together, by the way? You're going to have to take us through.
Well, they tie together because they're things that I enjoy, and I think you learn over time. You got to do things that you enjoy, and
life is too short.
Life is too short, and so on any given day, I'm either doing one or 2 of those events,
on the same day.
On the same day. If I could do all 3, that's even better.
That's a trifecta.
The trifecta. Yeah, but I've always enjoyed, and over the last almost 40 years, I've been involved in cycling, sailing, and channels and partner ecosystems.
So you go back to partnerships almost 40 years ago.
Almost 40.
Right out of school.
Well, not right out of school. I had some other jobs first. I was in the oil industry, and then when I made the transition to the tech industry, my first job was a channel job. Running international channels. So yeah, I've been at it for a long time.
So you have a lot of history. We're going to talk about that. We'll talk about the whole, like I talk about the ecosystem, and we'll talk about a little bit more about that. But so we have a long history together on the podcasting journey.
We do. You got a head start on me.
I got a head start, and I was just telling a previous guest about this. I got a phone call. We didn't know each other really. I think you reached out to me.
Yes.
And you were starting your podcast, and I had Ultimate Guide to Partnering maybe up for about a year or 2.
Yeah.
I don't know how far we were in our gestation there, but I just told you, hey, this is what I do. This is what I use, software I use. This is the person who did my audio. It was all audio back then, editing. And then didn't talk to one another. And then I wind up going back inside to Blackbaud, and it might have been right around the beginning of COVID. I think it might have been around that time. You reached out, and I didn't have the connection points. Like, it was a long time ago, and I didn't remember. And you had me on the podcast. You're like, yeah, do you remember this? And I was like, oh, wow, you've got this really cool podcast I've been listening to, this Channel Journeys podcast. So you've been tremendously succcell with your podcast.
Yeah, and Vince, it's been almost 6 years now.
Wow.
I think it's 6 years. Actually, it is 6 years into this in December.
That makes sense because we're
and it's funny because I reached out to a number of different channel podcasters, you included, and there were 2 varieties. You were the encouraging type who said, yeah, here's how you do it. You're helpful. There were a few others who were like, don't do it. It's like, it takes too much time. It's too hard. And I don't know if they didn't want the competition.
They probably didn't want the competition. They thought they had a lock on this thing.
Maybe
this podcast thing. Yeah.
But I didn't listen. In fact, when someone tells me that's sort of licensed, like, I gotta do it. Now I gotta try it.
And it isn't, it's not for the faint of heart, right?
No.
I mean, we're in a studio now. This is a whole different experience, but we both started off where it was like, here we are in our home office and we're recording, and we had an editor. At least we had an editor in the beginning. I was actually doing editing myself. But then there's a lot of manual work involved.
Yeah.
That people don't see behind the scenes.
Well, this is like, we started like the garage band, and then you're exactly like big time here.
Well, we've up-leveled the experience.
Yeah.
Right? Ultimate Partner, we've invested in this. We're doing events now. We're doing a lot of other things, which have been really cool.
It's very cool to see what you're doing.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And you've been a great friend and supporter along the way. And that's one of the reasons why we've continued to get together. It's that time of year again, right? We want to have a conversation about what's going to happen this new fiscal year now that we're in 2025. And so I wanted to talk to you about that. I wanted to learn about your journey. And I thought maybe we'd spend a few minutes there because you recently had a life-changing decision, right? So let's talk about what Rob is up to.
Yeah. Well, the big news is that I'm retired, at least from full-time channel chief positions. And so I have a different mission now, and the podcast is part of that.
Very cool.
And I've loved doing the podcasting. I've gotten so much back from it. You get a lot more back than you put into it.
Yes.
The friends that I've made, the things that I learned, it was like my private consulting practice in terms of getting information that I could use.
So good.
And
people don't realize how much you learn being a podcast.
I could use it as a partner leader. A lot of the ideas that I had as a partner leader came from the podcast, but I could also test ideas. So if I had an idea that I wanted to try at BeyondTrust, I would sort of test the waters a little bit, and I'd find someone to interview who was grappling with that challenge.
Very cool.
Yeah, so it paid off in a lot of different ways. And I want to continue that in my retirement, which I call semi-retirement.
Yeah.
Because I'm not just going off and sailing, though I hope to do a lot more of it.
You're too young to retire. You're too young to retire. I expect a lot more from you in the future.
Yeah.
A lot more, I'm sure, of the sailing and biking and cycling. And then hopefully a little, because we need you out there. We need your voice. So.
Well, I have a lot of experience, and I want to give that back. A lot that I've learned. Things are also changing very quickly, too. So I've got to not get stale. I've got to keep my finger on the pulse, which I want to do it through podcasting.
Good.
I think Channel Journeys is going to change a little bit. It's going to morph. I have some ideas of where I might take it. I might even go to video. The video is hugely popular.
You're welcome anytime down here in Boca.
Yeah, I'll have to move down, camp out here on the beach.
At least some of the year, probably. It's especially this time of year, it's a little chillier, nippier up there in the Atlantic.
It is, yeah. It was very, very good.
And look at the weather we have here.
Yes,
it's gorgeously gorgeous. So, you and I have had several conversations. You center on, we call it, channel, which is now ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about the tectonic shifts, right? And we've been chronicling these shifts we've been seeing really since COVID, right? There's been an acceleration and transformation. And then I have seen, having come out of the Microsoft world, this dominance, I will say, of the three hyperscalers. And it's becoming more and more prominent, especially with AI. The investments are so capital intensive right now. Microsoft alone is spending $16 billion a quarter on chips and data centers. You layer in Google Cloud and you layer in AWS, and it's an enormous level of investment. And there are very few other organizations that really can compete at that level. And really, it's becoming a place where do you land? Like, whose rails do you land on, right? So you're starting to see this, all the other ISVs, independent software vendors, even systems integrators and the like, they're placing their bets. They might be multi-cloud, but it's creating a dominance around that. And it's also really, if you start thinking about it, and like we always like to talk about our good friend Jay McVane and the 7 seats at the table, the customer is now more in a pull mode versus a vendor being at a push mode. And my point of view now is that there's over about $400 billion in these durable cloud budgets, which means that the decisions on which cloud you're going with are now being made at the board level, on the C-suite level at least, and that those budgets are available to other partners to tap or draw down against, right? So you can bring in an ISV, a security solution like BeyondTrust. You can bring in maybe another vendor, a systems integrator, maybe an MSP, and so on, and you can cobble together the solution that you need to drive your business. Yeah. That's really being made by the customer, burning down against that commitment and cobbling together or pulling together the partners into the group, right? And you've been seeing this as well.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk to you more about like where you see this going. You've talked about 2024. I want to get like a little perspective on what you've been thinking. What did you think going into 2024 we'd see? And I know you make a series of predictions, and I really want to focus today's conversation on where are we going this new year in 2025.
Yeah.
So let's talk about 2024 for a second, right? This has been an incredible year. again, if we use the parlance of decade of the ecosystem, we're in the last year of the first half of the, all right. So we're getting to the end of the end of the half. We're getting halftime here. So we're at the 2-minute warning, I guess, today. We've been seeing a tremendous amount of change. Marketplaces have become a dominant force. Again, tying into this conversation we've been seeing. And I know, a lot of your experience with BeyondTrust, you're working quite a bit with one of the hyperscalers and building solutions and offerings around that. What have you been seeing? What did you see this year, maybe that you didn't expect to see? And then also, you had a series of predictions going into the year.
Right.
See how you grade yourself on those predictions. So let's start there.
Well, on the hyperscaler front, what you were mentioning, that wasn't I didn't talk about hyperscalers in my predictions for 2024. I did in the predictions for the prior year, because I thought it was just a matter of fact, right? That how obvious that you've got to have marketplace as part of your ecosystem strategy.
That's right.
And I think most companies do have marketplace as somewhere in their ecosystem strategy. I think there are fewer companies still that are truly being as successful as they could be in capturing what you said is now over $400 billion in opportunity, which it just seems like such a no-brainer. But I was struggling with it too, and I interviewed some folks who were very successful in the marketplace. You have companies like CrowdStrike and more now doing over $1 billion.
Yep.
So it obviously works. There's huge opportunity there. But to be successful, what I was learning and talking to others is the level of investment that you need to make. You got to make an investment to be successful.
That's right.
And it's not just investment in co-selling. I mean, you've got to be willing to co-sell and make investments there. There are marketing investments. There are even product investments.
That's right.
That you have to make. But you also have to be comfortable with co-opetition.
That's right.
Because you're very likely going to compete to some degree with these hyperscalers in one form or fashion.
Or another partner that's also in the same account.
Right.
And you're not going to have full access to that customer in the co-selling motion.
Yeah. So I think the very successful companies, they embrace that. They embrace the co-opetition, they embrace the investment, and they are really, making huge strides with the marketplaces. So a lot of people are doing it. It has to be part of your ecosystem strategy, but you got to take the next step to be successful.
And it's a huge investment, right? People underestimate. Previous guests, we were talking about co-selling with Microsoft, and it really is. You have to have almost like a full-on campaign where you're building a system process and a go-to-market strategy just to work with the hyperscaler.
Yeah.
It's not just hiring an alliance manager who maybe did it before. You need to have your entire, you mentioned this, product, marketing, sales, operations, all aligned to this motion.
Yeah, which is tied to my predictions for 2025, which we'll get into. But back to 2024, so I had laid out 3 predictions that we published in a blog. And it was, number 1 was around... I think was changing metrics.
Yep.
One was around changing metrics.
Customer success and sales metrics.
Oh, yeah. Customer success was one.
Yep.
Sales metrics was another. And then AI, I think, was the third.
Right.
So in the area of partner success, I think I couched it as partner success finally gets a seat at the table with customer success.
Right.
And this is really happening. If you have any type of customer success program, partner success better be part of it.
That's right.
And we were talking about ASAP earlier. They put out a great ebook, and it's Partners Are the Customer Experience.
I love that.
And Norma and Nancy, who wrote it, did a great job of laying out all the different ways that partners play a role in customer success. And I used it kind of as a blueprint for formulating my strategy and my talking points internally of how we had to shift the mindset of our PS organization, of our customer success organization, and be much more around enabling the partners to drive that customer success.
And for context here, for people that maybe are not as familiar with organizations that have this set of components, right? Because depending on what industry you're in and how your go-to-market or your plan is, a lot of times, and I've seen this before on the inside, where your sales strategy is one thing, you might be partnering with partners there, but then when it comes to renewal time, right, and it comes to or delivery, you might have a direct motion.
Yeah.
And it's disengaged from the selling motion on the front end. Is that what you're describing here that needs to change?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we got to embrace partners for all the reasons that Jay McBain and we all talk about, right? The changes in the buyer journey and everything. But throughout the buyer journey, you want to have that customer success, which ultimately in the SaaS world leads to the renewal, right? And reducing churn and increasing your renewal rates.
And what do you think the impetus for the change that occurred? What caused, or what has sparked the change that you're seeing? Is it just greater awareness on the value of the partnerships, or what are you seeing? Because I always talk about the lack of alignment on partnerships at the C-suite. The CRO, the CFO, the CMO, the CSO are not always aligned with this partner organization, whether it be a channel chief or alliance leader or maybe both. What are you seeing that's different now? What are you seeing change?
I think the spark was the transition to this software as a service.
Yeah.
That's where churn became so important, and that was the beginnings of customer success. We started seeing customer success departments and organizations, and then technologies start popping up. That's what started the world, but I think what has changed is the need for partners to drive that. You can't, as your own organization. Most software companies and SaaS companies, even for valuations, they don't want to be services companies, right? The valuation they're trying to seek is as that software company.
That's right. Well, or should be seeking, right?
They should be seeking.
Valuation perspective.
Yeah. And there's a huge cadre of partners out there, and partners who want to get into services too, because they're shifting. The bar of ad model is shifting to services.
That's right.
And that's where the margins are.
That's right. And the MSP model.
And the MSP model, yeah. Right. And I think it's technology driven, it's customer driven, financially driven.
Yeah. So let's talk about the rest of the predictions from 2024.
Yeah. So the second prediction was around metrics. And, this has been a big challenge for channel leaders, partner leaders, because we have our traditional metrics.
Right.
And people like to look at what's your partner revenue, your partner originated revenue. These are things that are pretty concrete and fairly easy to track. But
in some respects, they're only understood by channel chiefs and people like us, though, right?
Probably so.
Right.
Probably so. But I found leadership also using that as the key metric of, is this investment working? But as you expand to the partner ecosystem, there's so much more that should be driving it. And I always say the partner ecosystem strategy should not be a partner strategy. It should be your business strategy.
I love it.
It should be a component of what you do as your business. That means that it's understood by the board, it's understood by your C-suite, and fully embraced and driven. And if that's the case, the business metrics ought to show proof of success. And so in the SaaS world, business metrics, things like CLTV, customer lifetime value, CAC, customer acquisition cost, just overall business and revenue growth and profit margins, what impact is your ecosystem strategy having?
Right. And how do you measure the impact? Do you measure it by reduction in CAC? And
exactly. You should see CAC going
based on lifetime value.
Exactly. Yeah. The challenge, though, is these are great metrics, but a lot of companies that have transitioned from the SaaS world, from the old perpetual on-prem world to the SaaS world, they weren't born in the cloud SaaS companies. So many of them aren't even tracking these metrics yet.
That's right. I had the experience of leading a partner journey with a large SaaS software company. And one of the few things that we measured against, we did this primarily in the Microsoft world, but also with our channel partners, was the number of at-bats. Like we had more opportunities to go sell something. Deal velocity, really the amount, the how quickly we could close deals, and then lifetime value. Were three metrics that we measured against pretty regularly.
That's good.
Yeah.
So that one, it's coming, but we're not quite there yet, I think, across the board.
What was the third one?
The third one was around AI, and I had a belief that AI was really going to...
What's that? What's AI?
Yeah, what's AI? That it was really going to help accelerate the adoption of the ecosystem and the growth of the ecosystem. I don't think we're there yet with AI. I think we're seeing every day new ways that AI is being used in the channel, integrated with channel technologies, consulting firms starting to integrate it into their practices and teachings, companies like Microsoft introducing AI partner programs, right?
Absolutely.
So there's a lot happening, but I think there's still a lot more that can happen that hasn't been discovered yet of how to really leverage this technology to drive the ecosystem and the collaboration of the ecosystem.
Let's spend a moment there, because I look at a few different areas, right? I think about discoverability of opportunities, right? Can AI help us find white space opportunities? Some people have also suggested that AI might replace partner development managers or partner sales executives, and different personas and roles. What do you think there?
Yeah, we were talking about podcasts. So I was listening to a podcast coming down, and they were talking about AI being used in fighter jets to replace pilots.
Wow.
And how they have such a better, in testing, they're like 100% accuracy.
Yeah.
and no fear.
They become drones, essentially.
Yeah.
Right? These threats become drones.
Yeah, they're AI-driven drones.
It's wild.
So can we have AI-driven, partner account managers? I think there's going to be a component of that.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of work, I think, that could be done very intelligently by AI, but there's still all the relationship building and other parts of the puzzle that we still have to have the partner managers doing. I think partner leaders and even C-suite people can be using AI to develop the strategies, right? I think you start seeing that happen.
Starting to see it too, even with tools like ChatGPT, where you can ask ChatGPT, like, help me develop my business plan for my partner strategy.
Yeah.
And some of what it might spit out isn't useful, but there's it does a pretty good job of uncovering information and pulling it forward.
Yeah.
So you do get some good ideas. I would use it for a second.
I'll call out, I hope she doesn't mind, my VP of North America channels, Lindsay, when I was at BeyondTrust, and I challenged her to come up with a strategy, and she came back like the next day with this awesome strategy. And I'm like, man, this is fantastic.
Wow.
And then she admitted, she goes, yeah, Rob, I use ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed that she did that.
I will admit as well, like we're doing our business planning here this past year, and I asked ChatGPT. We're a company that does events, media, has a community, does some advisory work. Tell us what our business plan should look like. And I wouldn't use it per se, but it knocked out about a 12-point strategy.
Yeah.
It knocked out things that maybe I wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah. I don't think AI is replacing the partner team. I think it just makes us so much smarter and more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I was at Ignite back in November of 2024, and, Microsoft is front-footed on Copilot.
Yeah.
And really, I would say pushing is probably not the right term, but encouraging partners. One of the things I heard from Dan Rippey, who's one of the partner, he runs the Microsoft Partner Program, Cloud Partner Program, is that we need 4 to 5 times the capacity. So we need more partners that can deliver AI solutions to our customers. And those partners either don't exist or they don't have the competencies or capacity to support right now. So it's
another interesting transformation of the channel.
So hopefully we're going to see more of that.
Yeah.
So lots of great learnings and feedback.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about channel, right? Because it in some respects, it feels like an old term to me sometimes, just because channel felt like this thing where I had a vendor and I had partners against it. And this year I saw, we had our big event in October in Dallas, and we had Cisco on stage, right? And you think about Cisco being the quintessential channel company, right?
Yeah.
And I had interviewed Rodney Clark on the podcast. I actually went out to his event and spoke to him there. And they're embracing this new approach. What do you think about that? What do you think about, we talked about this with the organizations, maybe not stepping in as much on marketplace. Where do you see this going? Like, how do you think this long tail, what does it look like?
Well, this, I guess, segues into my 2025 prediction.
Nice. Oh, I love that. I love that. So a great tee up.
Yeah, there you go. Great tee up. So where I think it's going. And so just kind of the distinguishing between channel and partnering, if you will, we made a concerted effort to actually change the terminology when I was at BeyondTrust.
Nice.
Because we wanted to shift people's thinking from the old transactional channel to the new thinking of partner ecosystem.
Right.
So we actually changed it to a partner program. We changed our channel managers to partner managers because words can matter, right?
They do matter.
And we didn't want people thinking in the old school way of channels. But my predictions actually for 25 were threefold. And one of them was that companies were actually going to revert, kind of out of a couple of reasons that I'll talk about, away from the ecosystem strategy.
Interesting.
And
Watch and listen to this. This is an interesting conversation. So they're going to go back.
They're going backwards.
Why?
Well, not for the right reasons. I think because 24 has been a tough year.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
A lot going on, tough economies, longer sales cycles, a lot of pressures, huge layoffs that we saw.
This ties into the tectonic shifts conversation.
It does.
Because we have seen change. We've seen a lot of economic headwinds, even this past year. We also had the elections, which also creates some headwinds and uncertainty in the market. And to your point as well, some of the organizations still doing pretty massive layoffs.
Yeah.
Cisco had a big layoff not too long ago.
And the partner or channel teams are getting impacted too.
That's right.
We've seen companies where the entire partner team was let go. We've seen just selective firing. We've seen, the channel chief role, people being ousted. All of those things happening because it's such a tough environment. and people are retrenching. And
why do you see that too? I mean, I have my own opinions on this, but why does partner get picked on more often?
Well, I think it's always been the case. We've always seen in times of bad economies, people don't understand it. They don't know the value. They don't see the value.
They don't see the direct attribution of revenue.
Yeah.
What you're saying.
And so they pull back. But I think that at this period, this is a huge moment of opportunity. Any downturn is a huge moment of opportunity for companies.
Absolutely.
That get it right, that make the investments, right?
And this is when a lot of organizations really flourish, right? Some of the biggest organizations we know were founded during down cycles.
Yeah, and you can come out of it very strong.
Yeah.
So one of the first things I said was building and managing and leading a partner ecosystem, it's going to get harder, not easier.
Yeah.
So you probably don't want to hear that, but it's going to get harder. And I think that's the reason it's getting harder is because it does take across the board, C-suite, board level buy-in, but not just buy-in. You can go in and continue and preach, but if they don't truly embrace it in their bones and they don't fully understand it and they don't do the research and learning about how it operates and what the power is of the ecosystem, then you're always fighting that uphill battle.
You're speaking my language. I talk about 7 principles of successful partnering. And first one is mindset, growth mindset.
Yeah.
Second one is executive commitment.
Yes.
So it's not just buy-in, it is like committed, we're resourcing, we're aligning the organization, and again, committing resources and dollars and all the things that need to happen to do that, right?
Yeah, so that's why I think when times get tough, you have 1 or 2 bad quarters, they're going to really start poking around in the company and questioning.
Yes.
And there's a thing that happens too, you see this in any company you've been in that starts going downhill. There's a lot of finger pointing. There's a lot of politics that spring up in a company that you didn't think had any politics.
Never happens.
And everybody's really fearful and protecting their turf.
Yes.
And so, bad things happen in that environment. And I think one of the bad things that happen is people start questioning the partnering strategy, and they go back to, well, what did we know? Let's go back to that channel, VAR-VAD transactional channel that really worked. It did work. It provided a lot of great value, but the world's not moving in that direction.
That's right.
You're talking about AI partners. We're talking about services partners, influence partners. That's where everything is heading. And if you listen to Jay McBain talking about the 7-layer cake, 7 different solutions in the customer's environment.
That's right.
Where are all those partners if you fall back on just a traditional transactional channel? You talk about the buyer journey and all the influencers that you want to have in your network.
At the 28 steps in the buyer journey.
Yeah, the 28 steps. Well, if you pull back, now you're in 1 or 2 steps. You've lost all the other ones that you can be part of with. So I hope you're not in a company that's pulling back, but if you are, you got to work really hard to get them back on track. Or you might want to look for a company that is on track because it's not a good place to be.
So I'm glad you mentioned this because I feel that at Ultimate Partner, and we're getting you to our next event. I guarantee it, which will probably be here in Boca, not in the not too distant future. But we do think that being able to access this $400 billion of commitments does create new opportunity, and it also empowers an ecosystem approach because. What the vendors are doing really well now, especially start off with AWS with CPPO, and then Microsoft with the multi-party private offers, and Google Cloud has one as well, is that the ability not only to have one partner that is tapping in to that budget, have multiple partners on the same offer.
Yeah.
And this creates a new opportunity area, right? Because we're not going after, we're not having to find new budget. We're going after existing budget to burn down again.
Yeah.
And I still feel like we're at the early days.
We are.
Somebody just recently quoted to me that we're close to $1 trillion in total spend in SaaS software and in IT, but that maybe 20 billion is going through marketplace right now, the total.
But over 400 billion in commit.
But 400 billion in commit.
Yeah.
So it's a huge opportunity that's still not tapped out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think these timid companies or who don't understand it are pulling back to the old way. I think the really smart, courageous companies, those courageous companies, it's really courageous leadership.
Right.
So the courageous leaders, and I hope you're in a company with a courageous leader who really is fully embracing this and making it part of the company strategy and diving deep and just continuing to invest in the partner ecosystem. And this comes to a situation, this is the difficult inflection point, which is what TSA talked about, swallowing the fish.
That's swallowing the fish. Yeah.
And if you remember when the books are coming out from TSIA, and there was a book on swallowing the fish, or was part of one of their books, I thought it was really interesting because they showed a very simple graph, and it looks like a fish.
Yep.
Because you have your expenses going up and you have your revenue earnings going down, right?
And it creates the tail and the body of the fish.
Yeah. And so you've got to swallow the fish. You got to get past that difficult point
That's right.
of higher costs, perhaps lower revenue, certainly lower earnings. And then when you come out of that, you come out stronger. Now your growth accelerates, right? And your costs come down.
And we saw this in the transition to SaaS.
I was at
Microsoft at the time. We were still selling enterprise agreements and licenses, and we were moving to a subscription model. And of course, we were Microsoft, so the cost wasn't that difficult for us to absorb or swallow.
Yeah.
But if you're a small SaaS company and you're moving, or that was the challenge, was moving to that SaaS model. What you're saying too is, in order to make this transition now to a hyperscaler growth or an ecosystem strategy, you have to invest early.
There are fish you have to swallow.
You have to swallow these fish.
And I can share some fish that I've seen.
I'd love to hear.
Yeah, some examples.
Yeah.
So when we talked about partner success being part of customer success, many companies have their own PS department, right?
Right.
That are out there selling services. You really want to shift that PS department's mission and role. The PS role should be to enable partners to drive customer success.
Interesting.
So it should be the new customer for the PS organization should be the partner, and centered around every engagement, making sure they're successful. And you do that by training, certification, enablement, jumping in and holding their hand on engagements, or a really difficult engagement, sending in your experts to jump in. But that should be the overall mission of the PS organization.
Love that.
But there's a fish to swallow there.
Yes.
Because you're going to have a period where your costs may go up as you're enabling those partners, and your income or your revenue on those services is going down.
That's right.
Right. So you've got to get through that inflection point. So that's one example. Another great one is
a great example, by the way.
If you want to invest in MSP, we know customers want more and more managed services.
That's right.
This is the trend, and you've got to go out there and be attractive to the MSPs. Your technology today may not be attractive. Your pricing policies, your technology, all of this, you may not have the right package that is really suitable to grow through the MSPs.
That's right.
I had one guy on my podcast talking about just converting from ARR to MRR and having a truly consumption-based model.
Yep.
And there's technology product investments you have to do and system investments.
That's right. I was just with an organization that's gone through that process at their event, and their market is MSPs. And they had to retool the front end of their applications to support the MSP coming in now and providing the service directly to the customer.
Yeah.
Versus them doing it through their own professional services organization.
Exactly. And I've had multiple people on my podcast talking about that. And the ones that made that investment, it might have taken 6 months, maybe 8 months to come out of it. But immediately they started opening up new markets that they couldn't go after before.
And these MSPs are growing substantially. I have friends that are in this MSP world, and it's amazing. And there's also an aggregation going on in this MSP community where, organizations are consolidating and aggregating MSPs into much larger, even billion-dollar organizations.
Yeah.
So these are not small fish.
Yeah. There's such huge opportunity out there, and you have to make the investment. You can't fake it. The MSPs, you have competition, right?
Yes.
You've got to make it very attractive for them.
One of the reasons I love it, by the way, is going back to like Ultimate Partner, our mission is that we're seeing more and more MSPs wanting to come to our events and learn from
that's great.
People like you talking about this and understanding how to better align.
Yeah.
Because they've kind of been out on an island by themselves before this.
Yeah.
And really having them embrace and be part of this whole ecosystem movement and this hyperscaler and marketplace movement is sort of new for many of them.
No, I think you're right. And just thinking about it, thinking about the MSP events that I've been to, they've been very fragmented and segmented away from the rest. And okay, this is an ecosystem strategy. Why aren't we bringing them together?
I have several MSPs that are in our Ultimate Partner experience, our community organization, and they are vehement that we need to get in front of more and more of these MSPs. So I love the fact that you're talking about this.
Yeah, that's great.
Also going back to the customer success, I want to come back there for a second, the professional services organization. It goes back to my days at Microsoft, and I want to share this because Microsoft was always prescient in terms of how it thought about partnerships. Mm-hmm. We had a professional services organization. Microsoft still has a professional services organization. It used to be called Microsoft Consulting Services, MCS. They've now rebranded it as ISU or some other acronym.
Mm-hmm.
But my point is Microsoft only provide, if you take a contrast like a IBM versus a Microsoft, only about 5% of the revenue for Microsoft is direct professional services. They will come in and support. They'll act as a SWAT team in many respects, or they'll be the architect coming in for a large Fortune 100. But they will bring the partners in or work with the partners to deliver the solutions.
Yeah.
And so what you described earlier is really what I've seen all along at Microsoft, but
Not too surprising.
not surprising, but a lot of these other organizations, and I've been in one as well, where they built out a very big professional services organization, a heavy bench to manage, big cost, low margin business.
But this gets back, I think, to leadership in a company. Because if your CEO is not embracing the ecosystem strategy, and you have a strong partner success leader who keeps coming back with, revenue for the company, it's very hard to shift the mindset, right? Unless you have leadership that fully embraces and understands why is it so important that we shift our strategy.
What have you seen to be the most successful? I talk about growth mindset and executive commitment almost in lockstep to one another. We've had Dr. Mike Gervais on the podcast. I think you might have seen some of the episodes, and he'll be back on again soon.
Yeah.
But what, we talk about like, how do you get that leadership team aligned in the right way? What has worked for you in your organizations?
Well, certainly coming in early and building a strategy and getting buy-in on a roadmap of where do we want to go? Where do we want to go and why do we want to get there, right? And aligning it to the company strategy. So if you start first what's the company strategy?
Yeah.
What do our customers need to achieve that? And then building back from there. And that creates, I think, a very strong strategy, but also a strong argument for why that strategy is going to work, right? But it's just almost daily, constant trying to get new buy-in, new leaders come in, and now you got to get the new leaders on board.
And some of them come from a direct-only model,
yes,
right? And so they don't understand it. They don't understand the cost associated with it, the investment strategy to get there. Right? And then you have to walk them through the metrics, right? And
the metrics are huge.
That's
at the end of the day, you get a grace period, but at some point you've got to have metrics to back it up.
We've had Greg Sarafin at our events, sitting in that chair on the podcast, big leader at EY, vice chair of ecosystem for Ernst & Young. And I also think he brings a unique skill set, acumen around financial that you don't often see in the channels out there, right? Do you agree with that?
I do. Yeah. I do. Yeah. We were talking about that at an partner event where their CFO was talking about the challenge that a lot of their customers have. And it's true. A lot of channel chiefs, if you talk to a CRO, they have to be on the numbers, right?
Absolutely.
They are totally in the numbers. And if you're not into the numbers at that degree as a channel chief, that can be risky.
In fact, that sometimes they come from that pedigree and not from the sales pedigree.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes we pivot a little too hard on the sales and partner pedigree in these channel or ecosystem leader roles.
Yeah.
And I think Jay has even said that as well.
Yeah.
So I want to shift gears a little bit.
All right.
I don't usually do this earlier in the podcast, but I thought it'd be a good time to do this. One of my favorite questions, probably my favorite question, is you're hosting a dinner party. And Rob, you can host this dinner party anywhere in the world, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I think I have an idea where you probably want to host a dinner party. And you can invite any 3 guests from the present or the past to this amazing dinner party. Whom would you invite and why?
Well, I think the first time you asked me this question when you interviewed me, my answer was Jesus.
I think it might have been.
And that's still my...
Is Jesus coming back?
Well, he's still my top... If he would come, if we invited him.
All right.
Jesus and a couple of his disciples. I'd love to have like Paul and Matthew and Jesus, for a conversation on a sailboat.
Okay.
But I've got another one for you.
All right, good.
So given we just got through the elections, tons of conversation across the country on which way is the country going. I think a lot about the founding of the country and the Constitution and what did the founders intend really. So my pick right now is I would love to have George Washington, probably Alexander Hamilton, and Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, I would love that dinner party.
That would be so fun to just hear them. I think just hearing them speak in the first place, would be fascinating.
That'd be very cool.
But hearing them talk about why they framed the Constitution the way they did, what their initial thought was, what do they think about the direction that we've gone today? Have we gone in the right direction or not?
And we're going to be at the 250th
The 250th coming up.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think that would be fascinating.
That is fascinating.
And Benjamin Franklin as an inventor, he'd have a ton of side stories about his inventions.
Oh, he has an amazing past.
Yeah.
Too. I mean, I love Ben Franklin in a room hearing about all his trips to Paris and all the things that he's done. He's a colorful character.
Yeah, no.
And Hamilton would be very cool. Having watched Hamilton and a little bit there about his experience and acumen financially as well. And then Washington was always like the strong silent type to me. Although, you never got to hear them speak.
Right.
But like kind of stoic is the way I would.
Yeah. And we have our impressions from, what we learned in history growing up and what we've read and seen. But to actually meet them, I think that'd be a fascinating.
That would be fascinating.
That'd be a long evening.
So where are we going to have the dinner party?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I haven't thought about that.
Okay. I envision this either Necker Island, like maybe we'll go see Richard Branson, and maybe on one of your sailboat excursions. And I want to talk about the sailboat excursion next.
Yes.
So tell us about that. So, we hinted along the way here about, you're down here today in South Florida, but you're starting another journey, which kind of ties into your channel journey, right? This whole sailing, cycling, and channel journeys.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit more about what's up next.
Yeah. So I'm passionate about sailing. I've been sailing for years. I got started not sailing, but as a Sea Scout. So
very cool.
A lot of kids are Boy Scouts. I was a Sea Scout.
I saw that. But you don't meet very many people that were Sea Scouts. How did that happen?
Well, I grew up in Seattle, and my neighbor buddy that I grew up with, he had joined, and he was telling me about all the fun it was. And you would do these trips on it. It was a powerboat, not a sailboat.
Okay.
But you'd go out every month. You'd go out for a weekend, and then in the summer you'd go out for like a 2-week cruise.
Very cool.
And so I just loved the water, learned how to navigate and tie knots and all those kinds of things.
Puget Sound, you had all those islands and
San Juan Islands, just fantastic. And then I did a tiny bit of sailing, but for some reason, when I got married for our honeymoon, we decided to go to the BVI, the British Virgin Islands.
Beautiful.
And I fell in love with sailing, and I started taking courses and learning how to sail and getting better and better. Bought a sailboat when we lived here in Florida.
Wow.
And recently I've fallen in love with ocean sailing. So I'm starting to do more ocean voyages. So I'm now in this network that I get a crew, and I'm going to be a crew member helping a captain get his boat from Bermuda to Tortola.
Wow, it sounds fast.
So it'll be about 5 or 6 days of sailing.
Water like this, probably.
Yes, it's going to be probably a little rougher than that.
Yeah, a little choppier than what we're having down here. But maybe when you get to Tortola.
Yes, it'll look like that, yeah.
So 5 or 6 days. What lessons does this teach you, this sailing? Because I feel like this is integral to like how your career path, your journey, your channel journey looks. Tell us more about that.
I think there is a connection to this. And if I think about, well, first, when I was just applying to be a crew on this boat with this captain, they interview you. You send your resume in, and the captain interviews you to see if you're suitable to be on the boat. And his first question was, "Hey, Rob, why do you like being out on the water? Why do you like ocean sailing?" And did not expect that as
what's the answer to that?
Well, I told him that I loved the sense of adventure, the freedom, the independence, the self-reliance, and just the beauty of God's creation that changes so rapidly. And you can have ocean that looks like that, and the next day, it's 20-foot seas and stormy and
spitting at you
on the side almost. And that I
don't like. That's not for me.
But I think the things that you get out of it, one is preparation. Mm-hmm. So especially in the ocean, if you're just island hopping, you want to be prepared, but you can always see land and it's not that difficult. You can probably swim ashore if you need to.
Right.
But ocean sailing, you have got to be prepared. So there's a lot of preparation that goes in it. There's constant learning. You got to want to constantly learn. I did a survival at sea course last week online.
Oh, wow.
Just as a refresher, and I really enjoyed it. I know that I'm into sailing because I enjoyed doing 12 hours of online training. So you got to be fully prepared, constantly learning. You've got to apply a lot of teamwork on the boat. We're going to be a crew of 4, and you have your own watches. So you do a night watch and a day watch, solo watches. So you're up there by yourself, but the team is there to back you up if anything were to go south. But also, you're not going to sleep well at night or during the day down below if you don't trust the guy who's up there,
right.
single-handling the boat.
Okay.
So there's a lot of trust involved too.
There is a lot of partnership going on here.
There's
trust, which is, I always talk about trust being the oxygen in the room.
Yes.
You've got to be self-reliant, but you also have to be able to rely on others.
On others, yeah.
and work through and with others.
Yeah.
Which is all very much.
And constantly training.
Yeah.
And
continual learning.
Continual learning and learning new technologies. This is going to be the first boat that I'm going to be on that has Starlink.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to have pretty much high-speed connection the entire trip.
Which is wonderful.
It's wonderful, but that it almost takes away a little bit of the sense of adventure for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good. It's net positive.
I think it's, I'm sure your wife will probably feel
she is very
happier about this, that she'll be able to know where you are and track your journey.
Because she's used to me going away for a week or two and not being able to communicate. And so she's trusting.
Are you bringing any recording equipment? And you're going to bring it? Are you going to do it?
I've got my phone. That's it.
All right. I was going to say, maybe you could do a little bit of a track of how your trip is going.
Well, I can send you the tracker. You can follow where I'm.
All right, good. I want that. So 2025 is on us. Like, I can't believe we are halfway through this decade of the ecosystem. Like, this is crazy.
Wow,
right?
It's crazy.
And we talked about the elections. We talk about time of change, uncertainty, economic headwinds, but we're moving into a new administration now. What do organizations, these partner organizations that are watching, listening to us today, what would be your advice to them on how they need to optimize or think differently going into 2025?
Yeah. Well, I hope for 25 that you are continuing to embrace the ecosystem.
Yes.
Be one of those courageous companies. Don't be the timid company pulling back. Be the courageous company. And I think it goes back a little bit, Vince, to what we were talking about sailing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I love getting out on the open ocean. You don't know exactly what's going to happen.
Yes.
But you know it's going to be great. And the ecosystem's kind of the same way there too. So you've got to plan and prepare for it. So now's the time you better have your strategy laid out. You better have your destination, right? I know we're headed to Tortola on the sailing trip, but what's your destination for the end of 25? Where do you want to be as a company, and where do you want your ecosystem playing? Understand where that is. And is it across the board? You have your marketing ecosystem play, your product ecosystem play, your finance, how you're pricing to MSPs. Is there that play? Map that out and start getting in the alignment. Here's where the teamwork comes in, Vince. Partnering is not teaming with your partner buddies, within the organization. It's not even just teaming with the sales team, and you better be doing that.
That's right.
But you've got to be partnering with your PS team, with your marketing team, with your finance and legal team. You've got to be partnering across the company. But then, are you getting your partners to partner? Are you bringing in that 7-layer cake?
I love it.
And putting them to connecting them. We started seeing more and more 4 or 5 partner deals.
Yep. And
we had our influencers, we had our delivery partner or 2, we had the transaction partner, all these different partners playing a role. And that's a huge opportunity.
Yeah. We have been using the term within Ultimate Partner, spark the ecosystem. And one of the things I'm most delighted about is when I see that partner to partner, or that cross-partner collaboration happen. It was one of the things coming out of our last event was people coming up to me and saying, since your event, I did $3 million with this partner. I didn't even know them before. Or I have a new relationship now with this channel partner, and they're driving our product, our ISV product, through their channels to their customers. And I just love to see that. And I think I encourage that, because I feel like you have to think outside. You need to think more broadly about this, right? You have to think outside your myopic view of what a channel partner looks like.
Yeah.
And it could be a partner that's very different than what you're used to partner.
It's going to be, yeah. And there's so many different flavors. You've got the marketplace partners, and they play a huge role in this.
That's right.
Because you've got the marketplace partners who have, you mentioned the billions that they're investing. They want to invest in their partners too. So they will invest in you and helping upgrade your product to be a better positioned product on the marketplace. So they'll help you with innovation, right? They'll help you with co-selling. They'll give you marketing funds. They're a huge and fantastic partner and source of funding to help you. And then you look better because you're bringing that funding to the organization.
You're speaking my line. I love it. I love it. Rob, so good to have you here today. So good to have you finally in the studio. We're going to get you back here. Rob, I'm putting a commitment to Rob that he's going to come join us at one of our live events this year.
Great.
I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for listening to The Ultimate Guide to Partnering. If you're not subscribed already and you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. And if you're listening on this podcast, please hit subscribe as well on your favorite podcast app. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, you can rank or review the podcast, and please give us up to 5 stars and give us a review. That helps us get better guests, and more viewers and listeners watching The Ultimate Guide to Partnering. You can also follow us and subscribe to our newsletter by going to theultimatepartner.com. And also you have access to our community. We've been talking today about our events and our community. You can learn more about our events at theultimatepartner.com, and also you can become a member of Ultimate Partner Experience, our community. And thank you for watching and listening and following along The Ultimate Guide to Partnering.